Chapter 27, Bone Health and Genetics. And this is specific training for the Bone Health Center for osteoporosis. So, explaining the concept of osteoporosis. In a normal healthy individual, the bone density, so that the strength of the bones, increases with age. So, up until the age of 25 to 30, the bones become progressively stronger. And then, and this is a normal process, the bone density begins to decrease again. And in a healthy individual, you will keep strong bones until the end of the lifespan. There are, however, genetic variations which speed up this breakdown of bone mineral density. And this is what happens. They also build up strong bones, but they lose it more quickly. And this can then lead to osteopenia, which is the first stage of osteoporosis, and then osteoporosis, where vertebrae might break in, where arms and other bones might break due to small stress to them, like lifting a heavy bag and so on. So certain genetic variations increase your bone mineral density loss. And here are a number of genes that play a role in this. And this is actually a cutout from the report again. The genes that are of interest are these ones. So it's called 1A1, VDR, that's vitamin D receptor, ESR1, and LCT. And these here again are kind of like the catalog numbers for genetic variations. In case you don't know what all of this means, please do watch the training for simple disease risk statistics. This here is scientific blah blah, what kind of variation it is. This here is the actual genetic result of the person. So every person, with some minor exceptions, but every person has 2 copies of each gene. We look at one genetic variations in one location. And if there's a G, it might mean one thing, and if there's a T, it might mean increased risk. So here the genotype is GG, so there's a G on each one of those genes. This is also GG, CC, TT. Now the odds ratio, again, if you don't know what an odds ratio is, please do watch simple disease risk statistics. Here the risk is 1-fold, so no increased risk. Here it's actually a protective genetic variation, so the risk is lower, 0.61-fold through this genetic variation. Here the risk is 1-fold, and the LCT gene doesn't really have a direct influence on osteoporosis, but I'll explain that later. Responder means that due to this genetic result, this person responds to a certain treatment or to a certain lifestyle interaction specifically well. And we will also look into what that means. Protective means this genetic variation can protect you, reduce your risk of osteoporosis, and there are no risk genotypes here. So looking at the gene, and this is again is a cutout from the actual report. You will find this for every gene in the report, and you will be able to read up on the science. This is the gene name, this is what the gene does, and this is the result. So from the 3 possible results, GG on both, TT on both genes, or G and T, one on each gene, this person has GG, like 81% of the general population, and they have no increased risk for osteoporosis. And they have the fact that bisphosphonate therapy is very effective. And that's a preventive drug that you can take to reduce bone mineral density loss. So this is why this person is a responder for something. GT means you have an increased risk, 26% higher, and bisphosphonate therapy is less effective. And TT is also bisphosphonate therapy is less effective, and the risk is even higher, 1.78-fold. And here are the scientific publications in case you're interested. This is the next gene, that's the vitamin D receptor. GG means protection against osteoporosis. It's a lower odds ratio. Hormone replacement therapy is effective in the prevention of osteoporosis. So a woman that might show increased bone mineral density loss and is considering hormone replacement therapy after menopause, this therapy would be effective also in helping to maintain bone density. Raloxifene is a drug is in this case less effective, and bisphosphonate is effective. But it might also be an increased risk where bisphosphonate is less effective, or an even higher increased risk with bisphosphonate therapy. Again, here's the science behind it in case you're interested. That's the next gene. So 15% have CC, no increased risk. 51%, so half of the population, have a twice as high risk, and 34% have a fourfold risk. And this here is the LCT gene, and there's some background information I need to tell you. This is actually not a bone relevant gene, but it is the gene that causes lactose intolerance. So if people have the CC genotype, so the C on both copies, it means that they do not produce the enzyme necessary to digest lactose, milk sugar, with increasing age. In people that have the CC, there's a very high likelihood that they become lactose intolerant over time, while the other genotypes do not. And studies have shown that people that have this genotype or are lactose intolerant take in significantly less calcium than others. So what we would do is we would interact if we know this person takes up especially little calcium because they don't eat milk products which have a lot of calcium, then we would specifically make sure that this person eats significantly more calcium than another person without this intolerance would do. So CC means lactose intolerant with very high likelihood during the course of the lifespan, and the other ones mean no increased risk of lactose intolerance and normal calcium intake. All right, and here is the overview. So as you've seen, there was one gene which reduced the risk. So actually we had a lower risk than an odds ratio of 1. So it's protective. So the lowest risk can be shown on a scale here. So it's an odds ratio of 0.61. And the highest risk is a 7-fold risk. Meaning if you have the worst genes, your risk is 7-fold higher to develop osteoporosis compared to a person with the optimal genes. And this arrow shows where you are in this. So average risk would be the risk of the general population. And this person has a significantly higher risk, but it might also be lower. So you're protected compared to everybody else. And then the other question, your capacity to absorb calcium is normal or reduced depending on whether you are genetically predisposed to be lactose intolerant or not. So in this case, not. So as said, this program is useful for prevention, not for early detection, but also for better treatment. So let's look at the prevention advice. Prevention is the most important thing for osteoporosis, because with prevention, with the right minerals taken in at the right amounts and the right lifestyle intervention, you can really slow down bone mineral density loss. It's hard to rebuild lost bones, but it is possible and quite effective to maintain it if you know that you are at higher risk. And prevention is just like saving money. If you start too late, it's not effective. If you start early on, you have a lot of options. If you start in middle age, then you still have potential. But if you start when it already started to affect your health, then even prevention is not going to be effective anymore. So the preventive measures, and again, this is all written in very simple language in the report. You can check out the different interventions that we recommend. Just to summarize it quickly, eat more calcium. That's one very important aspect, especially in the case of lactose intolerance, eat much more calcium, other sources of calcium. Make sure you get plenty of vitamin D, which is either through eating sea fish or food containing vitamin D, or through supplements. Same goes for calcium. And depending on your risk, we do have a supplement that can be created based on your genes to make sure that you get the right amount of calcium and the right amount of vitamin D. Then vitamin D can also be produced when you go outside, when your skin is irradiated by UV rays from the sun. So outdoor activities also help you. Then avoid phosphate-containing products. Phosphate is kind of the opposite of calcium supplementation. Calcium supplementation leads to building of strong bones, and phosphate leads to calcium extraction from bones. So having a lot of phosphate in your food, which is sausages, meat, chocolate, even some cheeses have more phosphate than they have calcium, so they are not beneficial for prevention. So you should reduce food that contains a lot of phosphate. And with the program, especially with the nutrition program, we can help you to avoid these types of food. Then favor sports that put stress on bones. If you have the tendency to build or to lose bone density, you should really stress them, because this then activates your body to build up stronger bones again. And this is a sport that would really stress your bones. Weight training, maybe jogging. Swimming is not so good because it doesn't put much stress on your bones. Vibration plate has actually been shown to put stress on bones uniformly and maintain the bone density quite well. And you should avoid alcohol, and you should not smoke. It's not just because of skin cancer, lung cancer, but it's also detrimental to bone health. You should avoid high sodium, so using a lot of table salt, phytic acid, the amino acids cysteine and methionine, oxalic acid and caffeine, because all of these are detrimental to the bone health and bone mineral density. Again, if you also order the nutrition plan, the nutrition sensor, this will all be taken into account when recommending certain types of food. And then you should also treat diseases such as hormone disorders, stomach, intestine, kidney, liver, and joint diseases, because progressing diseases in these categories can lead to increased breakdown of bone mineral density. So that was the prevention part. The next question is better treatment. This is also a cutout from the report. So there are different types of therapy that can be used to slow down bone mineral density loss. And genetics have shown that some of these treatments are better with some genetic types and not so good with other genetic types. So if we look at this, bisphosphate therapy is generally effective, so it's in a high area. The hormone replacement therapy, obviously only for women, men will not have this bar, is also quite effective. If you combine hormone replacement therapy plus alendronate, then it's a reduced effectiveness. Alendronate and raloxifene also reduced, and raloxifene by itself also. So if you get treatment, you will find out which kind of drugs and preventive substances are going to be more effective or less effective for you. And this is going to be different from one person to the next. So we can really optimize treatment. Here you would see that these therapies would be beneficial, while these are going to be less effective. Now, then there are certain drugs, and there is a training on the pharmacosensor which explains how drugs are broken down, how they activate some drugs, how they cause side effects with other drugs. And we can do this test, and we can find out which kind of drugs that are used in the therapy for osteoporosis, how fast they are broken down. And if you look at this here are the different drugs in the list. This is the effect, so normal or even stronger effects are possible. And the breakdown is varying, so sometimes it's broken down faster, here 150%, or slower, here it's only 80% breakdown. Then how common you would expect side effects, more common or normal, and the recommended daily dose. And this can actually vary quite a lot from one person to the next. And if you see very low breakdown speeds and a low recommended daily dose, it would be advisable to find out an alternative drug if possible. As you can see here, it's advisable here and here. So you can go through this list if ever you need a painkiller in this case, and you should look for some that have normal breakdown, normal action, and normal dosage, and otherwise you need to adjust the dosage. And that's the end of chapter 27 for the bone health sensor.